Welcome back on Spillover. Before we get into anything else tonight, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now. Put the phone down, pause the music, close every other tab, because what I'm about to tell you is going to completely change the way you look at the night King Von died. We all know the story. November 6th, 2020. Atlanta. A fight breaks out outside a hookah lounge. Shots are fired. And by the end of that night, one of Chicago's most gifted rappers is gone forever. Everyone picked a side. Team Von. Team Quando. OTF against QC. And for years, this beef has been simmering, boiling, threatening to overflow. But tonight is different. Because I sat down with someone who was there that night. Someone who watched everything unfold with their own eyes. And this person? They are not a random witness. They are not some industry plant trying to get clout. This person shares blood with King Von himself. Yeah, you heard that right. A member of King Von's own family, someone Von trusted with his life, was standing on the other side that night. And they finally decided to talk. Now, before I reveal who this person is, ask yourself, do you already have a name in your head? Because trust me, when I tell you who it is, your jaw is going to hit the floor. Stay locked in. This is only just beginning. Now look, I know what you're thinking. You're sitting there saying, bro, we've heard this story 100 times. And yeah, you're right. We have heard this story. We've heard Quando's version. We've heard OTF's version. We've heard the lawyers talk. We've heard the blogs talk. We've heard everybody and their mama break down that night frame by frame. But here's what nobody ever told you. Here's what got buried, deliberately buried, under layers of PR moves, label politics, and straight-up fear. Because the people who know the real truth about what happened outside Monaco Hookah Lounge on November 6th, 2020, those people have been quiet. Not because they forgot. Not because they moved on. But because they were scared. Scared of what would happen if the full picture ever came out. And tonight, that picture is coming out. Let's go back. November 2020. The world is still half locked down. Rap beef is at an all-time high. King Von is on the absolute top of his game. Welcome to a Block just dropped. The numbers are insane. The streets love him. The industry respects him. He's not just a rapper at this point. He's becoming a legend in real time. And Quando Rondo, young, hungry, equally dangerous, is coming up fast out of Savannah, Georgia with his own loyal following. These two moving in the same spaces was always going to be a problem. People close to both of them knew it. Industry insiders knew it. Even certain family members on both sides knew that if these two ever ended up in the same room, it wasn't going to end with a handshake. But what nobody predicted, and I mean nobody, was what actually went down behind the scenes before the first punch was even thrown. See, what the blogs never reported, what even the court documents barely scratched the surface of, is that there were conversations happening. Private conversations. Between people in Von's circle and people in Quando's circle. And some of those conversations were happening way closer to home than Von ever knew. Now I'm going to say a name in this video. And when I say it, I need you to understand that what I'm presenting tonight is based on what sources close to the situation have shared. This isn't court testimony. This isn't a confession. But it is information that has been passed around in very specific circles for a very long time. And nobody in mainstream media has had the guts to put it out there. So here we go. The night of November 6th, Quando Rondo did not pull up to Atlanta alone. We already knew that. Lil Tim was there. Several others were there. But what we did not know, what has now been confirmed by multiple sources, is that someone in that group that night had a direct personal blood connection to King Von. Not a friend. Not an associate. Not someone who just grew up in the same neighborhood. Family. And not distant family either. We're talking about someone who sat at Von's Thanksgiving table. Someone who Von called when things got heavy. Someone Von trusted in a way he didn't trust most people. Because in Von's world, trust was the rarest currency there was. Now, I'm not going to drop the name yet. Because before I do, you need to understand how this happened. Because it didn't happen overnight. This wasn't some sudden betrayal that came out of nowhere. This was something that had been building, quietly, painfully, privately, for months. See, Vaughn's rise created tension in places people don't like to talk about. When you go from nothing to everything that fast, not everybody around you grows with you at the same speed. Some people get left behind. Some people start to feel overlooked. Some people, even people who love you, start to feel like they're standing in your shadow instead of standing beside you. And in those dark emotional spaces, that's where outside influences creep in. Sources say that this family member, let's call him X for now, had been going through a serious personal crisis in the months leading up to November 2020. Financial problems, relationship problems, and a growing sense of resentment that he tried to hide but couldn't quite keep buried. And somehow, through a chain of connections that nobody fully mapped out until it was too late, X ended up in contact with people in Quando's camp. At first it was casual. Just talk. Just venting. The kind of conversations that feel harmless until you look back at them later and realize they were anything but. But then the conversations got deeper, more specific, and at some point, a line got crossed that could never be uncrossed. Now, was X directly involved in what happened that night? That is the question that has been tearing certain people apart for the last 4 years. Because there are those who say X didn't know how far things would go. That he thought it was just going to be a confrontation, a fight at most, nothing more. And then there are others, people who are much closer to the situation, who say that X knew exactly what the night was building toward, and he showed up anyway. I'll let you sit with that for a second, because here's where it gets even heavier. After Vaughn passed, after the smoke cleared and the reality of what happened started to set in, X disappeared. Not physically. He was still around, still showing up at family gatherings, still posting tributes on social media like everybody else, still crying at the right moments in front of the right people. But internally, the people who really knew him say he was gone, checked out, like a man carrying something so heavy he couldn't stand up straight anymore. And for a while, people just assumed it was grief. Normal grief. The kind that hits differently when you lose someone that close. But then, slowly, certain things started not adding up. Little inconsistencies in his story about where he was that night. His pain felt managed, controlled, like someone who had rehearsed it. And that's when people closest to Vaughn's inner circle started asking questions that nobody wanted to ask out loud. Questions like, why wasn't X reachable the night it happened? Why did his phone go to voicemail for 3 hours straight? Why did he only show up after everything was already over? And most importantly, who was he with that night? These questions circulated quietly for months, then for years. Whispered in private conversations, in DMs, in phone calls that people were careful not to have on certain phones. And then, just recently, something changed. Someone talked. Not publicly. Not on a podcast. Not on social media. But someone who had been holding this information, holding it like a weight that was slowly crushing them, finally let it go. Passed it to the right people. And eventually, it found its way here. And what they revealed about that night, about X, about what was communicated, about what was known before those shots were ever fired. That is exactly what we're getting into next. Someone talked. And when I tell you that those 2 words changed everything, I mean that literally. Because the person who finally broke their silence wasn't some random industry gossip. Wasn't a blogger looking for clout. Wasn't someone with an agenda trying to take down a name. This was someone who was there. Someone who had first-hand knowledge of what happened in the hours leading up to that shooting. Someone who had been carrying this secret like a stone tied around their neck. And after 4 years of silence, 4 years of watching the wrong narrative dominate every conversation about that night, they finally said enough. Now, before I get into what was revealed, I need you to understand the context. Because this isn't just about one night. This story goes back further than November 6th. It goes back to a relationship dynamic that was fractured long before Atlanta ever entered the picture. See, X and Vaughn had history. Real history. The kind that goes beyond music and street politics. They grew up breathing the same air, eating at the same tables, knowing the same people in the same tight spaces where everybody's business is everybody's business whether you want it to be or not. And for a long time, that bond was unbreakable. Vaughn was the type of person who, once he loved you completely. No half measures. No conditions. If you were his people, you were his people for life. And X was exactly that kind of person to Vaughn. But life has a way of testing those bonds in ways you never see coming. The source, let's call her Maya, because she asked to remain anonymous and we're going to respect that. Maya had been close to both X and Vaughn's wider circle for years. She wasn't on the outside looking in. She was in the room. At the dinners. On the trips. She knew the dynamics, the tensions, the unspoken things that never made it to social media or interviews. And what Maya revealed in her conversation with our team was this. Approximately 6 weeks before November 6th, X had a conversation with someone connected to Quando Rondo's camp. Not a minor conversation. Not small talk. A sit-down. A real, deliberate, you know exactly what you're doing kind of conversation. And in that conversation, according to Maya, X provided information. Specific information. About Vaughn's movements. About his habits. About the kinds of places he liked to go when he was in Atlanta. The kind of information that only someone truly close to Vaughn would even have access to. Now, Maya is careful to say that she does not believe X intended for Vaughn to die. She is firm on that point. She says X thought he was just, and these are her words, helping things stay controlled. Like he thought by feeding information to the other side, he could somehow manage the situation. Keep it from escalating. Play both sides just enough to protect himself and maybe, in his own twisted logic, protect Vaughn too. But that's not how these things work. And deep down, X knew that. He knew exactly what world he was operating in. He knew that information like that doesn't get used for peaceful purposes. He knew that when you hand someone a map to a lion, you don't get to act surprised when the lion gets hunted. And yet he did it anyway. Maya says that in the weeks that followed that conversation, X started pulling back from Vaughn. Subtle at first. Not returning calls as quickly. Making excuses to not link up. Creating distance in that quiet way people do when they're ashamed of something they can't take back. Vaughn noticed. Of course he noticed. Vaughn was sharp like that. He read people the way most people read books. And according to Maya, Vaughn actually mentioned to someone close to him that X had been acting different. That something felt off. That he couldn't put his finger on it, but his gut was telling him something wasn't right. But Vaughn, being Vaughn, didn't push it. He had too much going on. The album, the shows, the street politics that never fully leave you no matter how famous you get. He filed it in the back of his mind and kept moving. He never got the chance to go back to that file. Now here's where the story takes another turn, because X wasn't the only variable in play that night. Sources say that on November 6th itself, the day of, not weeks before, there was a series of phone calls. Rapid fire. Back and forth between numbers that, when you map them out, create a very uncomfortable picture. One of those numbers belonged to someone in Quando's immediate circle. Another belonged to a location-based contact in Atlanta. Someone who knew the city, knew the venues, knew exactly where certain people would be on a Friday night. And a third number, a number that has never been publicly connected to any of this, belonged to X. 3 calls. Within a 90-minute window. On the same evening that King Vaughn walked into Monaco Hookah Lounge for the last time. Now, is that proof of direct coordination? Legally? No. People make phone calls. Coincidences exist. Nobody is sitting here saying that those 3 calls equal a smoking gun in a court of law. But in the court of human understanding, in the court of knowing how these situations work, knowing how information travels, knowing how the streets operate, those calls mean something. And everybody in the circles where this information has been circulating knows exactly what they mean. Maya broke down when she talked about this part. She said, and I'm quoting her directly here, "I kept telling myself it wasn't what it looked like. I kept finding reasons to explain it away. But after a while you run out of explanations and you're just left with the truth." And the truth, as Maya sees it, is that X knew Quando's people were going to be in Atlanta that night. He knew there was going to be a confrontation, and he did nothing to warn Vaughn. Nothing. Not a call. Not a text. Not a quiet word in someone's ear. Nothing. He just went silent and let the night unfold. Now, when this information started circulating in certain circles, the reaction was exactly what you'd expect. Disbelief. Anger. People who had known X for years refusing to accept it. People calling Maya a liar. People saying she had an agenda, that she was bitter, that she was making things up for attention. But then, something unexpected happened. A second source emerged. Completely independently. Someone who had no connection to Maya. Someone who didn't even know Maya had already spoken. And this second source, let's call him Dre, came forward with a piece of information that corroborated exactly what Maya had said. Not in general terms. Not vaguely. Specifically. Dre said he had personally seen X in the company of one of Quando's associates approximately 2 weeks before the shooting. Not in passing. Not a coincidental run-in. They were together. Deliberately. In a setting that had no innocent explanation given everything that was happening between the two camps at that time. When Dre confronted X about it, casually, not accusatorially, just "Hey, what were you doing with that guy?" X got defensive immediately. Shut the conversation down. Changed the subject with an aggression that Dre said felt like guilt wearing the mask of attitude. And Dre, like Maya, filed it away. Told himself it was nothing. Went on with his life. Until November 6th made it impossible to keep filing things away. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, okay, so where is X now? Why hasn't anyone confronted him directly? Why hasn't Vaughn's family addressed this? Why hasn't Quando said anything about it publicly? And those are exactly the right questions to be asking. Because the answers to those questions are, in many ways, even more explosive than everything I've just told you. Vaughn's family, certain members of it, are not in the dark about these allegations. They have heard versions of this story. Some of them have heard it in detail. And the response within the family has not been unified. Not even close. There are those in Vaughn's family who want the full truth to come out. Who feel like Vaughn deserves that. Who feel like 4 years of a half-told story is 4 years too many. And then there are others, people who also loved Vaughn deeply, who are terrified of what the full truth might do. To the family. To relationships. To the very fragile peace that certain people have been trying to maintain since 2020. Because when betrayal lives inside your own bloodline, the truth doesn't just hurt the person who betrayed you. It hurts everyone connected to them. And that internal family division, that were happening behind closed doors, is something that Quando Rondo is now very much aware of. And according to sources, he's been watching it very closely. Because Quando has his own version of events. His own knowledge of who knew what and when. And for a long time, he stayed quiet. Kept it close to his chest. Let the accusations fly without firing back. But recently, something shifted. Something that made Quando decide that staying quiet was no longer an option. And in this game, in this world where silence is survival and talking can get you killed, when someone like Quando Rondo decides that staying quiet is no longer an option, you better believe the decision didn't come easy. You better believe that before he opened his mouth, before he let any of this information leave his circle, he sat with it. He weighed it. He calculated every single consequence. And he still chose to speak. Now, people have painted Quando as the villain in this story for 4 years straight. 4 years of being the man who took Vaughn from us. 4 years of death threats, label pressure, court cases, and a murder-for-hire plot that the feds say Lil Durk orchestrated specifically to end his life. 4 years of carrying the weight of that night on his back while the internet decided his guilt before a single piece of evidence was ever properly examined. And through all of that, Quando stayed relatively composed. Relatively quiet. He dropped end of story, trying to give his perspective through music. He did a few interviews. He maintained that what happened that night was not premeditated, that it was a confrontation that escalated beyond anyone's control. But here's what Quando never said publicly, until now. He knew someone in Vaughn's circle had been feeding information to his camp before that night. He knew. Not after the fact. Not in hindsight. He was aware, in real time, that there was a pipeline of information flowing from Vaughn's side to his side. And according to sources directly connected to Quando, when he found out who that pipeline was, when the name was put in front of him, his reaction was not satisfaction. It was not triumph. It was disgust. Because even in the middle of the deepest beef of his life, even when he and Vaughn were on a collision course that everyone around them could see coming, Quando did not respect what X had done. Did not respect the betrayal of it. Did not want to win that way. Sources say Quando told someone close to him, and again I'm paraphrasing from what was relayed to our team, I didn't need that. Whatever happened that night, that wasn't because of what he told us. We already knew where we were going. He didn't change nothing. He just showed who he was. Read that again. He just showed who he was. Because that's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't always change the outcome. Sometimes the chain of events is already in motion before the betrayer even makes their move. Sometimes the universe is already lined up the way it's going to be lined up regardless of what any one person does or doesn't do. But the betrayal still happened. The choice was still made. And the person who made that choice still has to live with it. And X, whoever X truly is, has been living with it every single day since November 7th, 2020. Now here is where Quando firing back gets real and gets personal. Because recently, within the last few months, members of Vaughn's family have been making public statements, social media posts, interview comments, things that, on the surface, look like grief and remembrance. But underneath, if you know what to look for, carry pointed accusations directed at Quando. Suggestions that he has never taken full responsibility. That he has been hiding behind legal proceedings and carefully worded statements, while Vaughn's legacy gets used as a weapon in a beef that refuses to die. And Quando, who has watched every single one of these statements, finally responded. Not with a diss track. Not with a social media post full of vague threats and emojis. But with something far more calculated. Far more dangerous. He responded with information. Through channels that our team was able to access, Quando essentially put out a message to anyone paying close attention. A message that said, if Vaughn's family wants to talk about that night, let's talk about all of that night. Let's talk about every phone call. Let's talk about every person who was where they were supposed to be, and every person who wasn't. Let's put the full picture on the table and let the people decide. And the specific detail that Quando pointed to, the detail that he says proves he was not the only architect of that night's tragedy, centers entirely around X. Around the access X provided. Around the communications X had. Around the fact that someone Vaughn trusted completely had already compromised the safety of that night before a single person stepped foot in that parking lot. Quando's message, stripped down to its core, is this. Don't come at me about that night when someone sitting at your own table helped set the stage. I didn't need a spy. I didn't ask for one. But one showed up anyway. And you know who it is. And so do I. And now, so does everybody else. Now, the reaction to this information leaking out has been exactly what you would expect. Vaughn's fanbase is divided. Deeply, painfully divided. There are fans who refuse to believe any of this. Who see it as Quando trying to deflect. Trying to muddy the waters. Trying to take the spotlight off his own role in that night by pointing fingers at someone in Vaughn's family. And honestly, that reaction is understandable. When you love someone the way Vaughn's fans love him, the idea that someone in his own family contributed to his death is not just painful, it's almost impossible to process. But then there are fans, and this group is growing, who have been connecting dots for years. Who always felt like the official narrative had holes in it. Who always sensed that the full story hadn't been told. And for those fans, what is coming out now feels less like a shocking revelation and more like a confirmation of something they always suspected but never had the words for. Social media has been electric with this. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the conversations are happening everywhere. People are going through old footage, old interviews, old social media posts from the people closest to Vaughn, looking for clues, looking for inconsistencies, looking for that one moment where X's mask slipped and the truth peeked through. And some of what people are finding, some of the timelines people are piecing together publicly right now, is genuinely difficult to dismiss. There's a clip circulating, and if you haven't seen it, go look for it after this video, where X appears at a public event approximately 3 weeks after Vaughn's death. And in the background of that clip, barely visible but absolutely there if you look closely enough, is a face. A face that has been identified by multiple people independently as someone directly connected to Quando's circle. 3 weeks after the shooting, at an event that X attended, standing in the same frame. Now, could that be coincidence? Sure. Atlanta is a city. People cross paths. Nobody is saying that one clip is the entire case. But taken together with everything else, the phone calls, Maya's testimony, Dre's account, Quando's own message, it starts to paint a picture that is very, very hard to look away from. And the person at the center of that picture, X, has not said a word publicly about any of this. Not a denial. Not a response. Not even the kind of vague social media activity that people use to signal their innocence without actually claiming it. Just silence. The same silence he maintained on November 6, 2020. And in some ways, that silence is the loudest thing in this entire story. Because innocent people tend to speak up when they're accused of something this serious. Especially when the accusation involves the death of someone they claim to love. Especially when their name, even in coded, anonymous form, is being connected to one of the most devastating losses the rap world has experienced in years. The silence says something. And Vaughn's real fans, the ones who have been paying attention since day one, they hear it. They hear it loud and clear. Now, where does this go from here? That is the question nobody can fully answer right now. Because we are watching a situation that is still actively unfolding. Quando is not done talking. Vaughn's family is not done responding. And X, whoever X is, cannot stay silent forever. At some point, the truth has a way of demanding to be heard. It always does. Vaughn built his entire legacy on raw, unfiltered truth-telling. He rapped about real things, real people, real consequences. He never hid behind metaphor or comfortable distance. He looked the darkness directly in the eye and described exactly what he saw. And maybe, in some poetic, painful way, the story of what really happened the night he died is going to reflect that same uncompromising commitment to truth. No matter how uncomfortable it makes people. No matter whose name ends up attached to it. No matter how many relationships it breaks or how many carefully maintained silences it shatters. The truth about November 6, 2020 is still out there. And it is getting closer to the surface every single day. Call to action. Alright, if you made it to the end of this video, I need you to do something for me right now. First, hit that like button. Not just because it helps the channel, but because Vaughn's story deserves to be heard. Every view, every like, every share keeps this conversation alive. And this conversation needs to stay alive. Second, subscribe. Because this is not the last chapter of this story. We are actively following every development. Every new source that comes forward. Every statement that gets made and every silence that speaks louder than words. When the next piece of this drops, and it will drop, you need to be here for it. Hit that bell notification so you don't miss a single update. Third, and this is the most important one, go to the comments right now and tell me what you think. Do you believe X is real? Do you think Quando is telling the truth or deflecting? And most importantly, do you have a name in your head? Because the comment section on this video is already going crazy and I want to know where you stand. The streets are watching. The family is divided. Quando has fired his shot. And somewhere out there, X is reading these comments too. Drop your thoughts below. Share this video with everyone you know who followed this story. And remember, in this game, the truth always has a name. We just have to be brave enough to say it out loud. Stay locked in.